My husband made me sign papers while I was exhausted. The closing didn't go as planned. I remember the pen feeling like it weighed 100 pounds. My hand was shaking so badly I could barely hold it steady. I was sitting at our kitchen table, wrapped in a thick blanket, shivering despite the heat being cranked up to 75 degrees. If this story moved you, please like and subscribe. Your support helps us build a stronger community every single day. I was recovering from a severe bout of pneumonia that had kept me bedridden for 3 weeks. My head was pounding, my vision was blurry, and all I wanted was to crawl back into the dark safety of my bedroom and sleep for a week. My husband, Richard, stood over me. He wasn't comforting me. He wasn't offering me tea or soup. He was tapping his finger impatiently on a stack of crisp white papers. "Just sign right here, Sarah," he said, his voice tight. "We've been over this. It's just the refinancing paperwork. We need to lower the interest rate to save money for your medical bills." He thrust the pen closer to my hand. "Come on, honey. The notary is waiting outside. I don't want to keep him." I looked up at him, trying to focus. His face was a blur, but I could feel the tension radiating off him. "Can I read it again?" I whispered, my voice raspy. I feel so out of it." Richard sighed, a loud, dramatic sound of frustration that made me flinch. "Sarah, we read it yesterday. Remember? You're just confused because of the medication. Do you really want to read 50 pages of legal jargon right now? Your eyes can barely stay open." He was right. I couldn't focus on the text. The letters were swimming on the page. "I handled everything," he continued, his tone softening just a fraction, shifting from annoyed to manipulative. "I'm doing this for us. For you. I want to make sure we aren't drowning in debt while you recover. Do you trust me?" That was the question. Did I trust him? We had been married for 5 years. He was charming, ambitious, and handsome. But lately things had been different. He had been distant. He stayed late at the office. He took phone calls in the garage. But I was sick. I was vulnerable. I convinced myself that my suspicions were just the fever talking. "I trust you," I whispered. I didn't have the energy to fight. I pressed the pen to the paper. The ink flowed. I signed my name on the line he pointed to. Then the next page. And the next. There were so many signatures. My hand cramped. "Just a few more," Richard urged, flipping the pages quickly. He didn't let me linger on any page. He kept his hand over the top half of the documents, guiding my eyes only to the signature block at the bottom. "Sign here. And here. Initial here." Felt like a marathon. By the time I signed the last page, I was sweating and dizzy. "Good girl," Richard said, snatching the papers away the second the pen lifted. "See? That wasn't so hard." He quickly organized them into a folder. "I'll take these to the notary in the car. You go back to bed." He didn't help me up. He didn't walk me to the room. He grabbed his keys and the folder and practically ran out the front door. I sat there for a moment, listening to the sound of his car engine revving in the driveway. A strange, cold feeling settled in my stomach. It wasn't the pneumonia. It was instinct. Something about the way he had covered the text. Something about the urgency. It felt wrong. I slept for 14 hours. When I woke up the next morning, the fever had broken slightly. My head was clearer. The house was quiet. Richard had already gone to work. I dragged myself out of bed and went to the kitchen. The table was empty. The papers were gone. I made myself a cup of tea and sat down, trying to remember the night before. Refinancing. That's what he said. Lower interest rates. I walked over to the counter where we kept our mail. I started sifting through the pile. Bills, junk mail, a flyer for pizza. Then I saw it. A letter from our mortgage bank. I opened it. "Dear Mr. and Mrs. Evans, regarding your inquiry about a second mortgage." I frowned. Second mortgage? Richard had said we were refinancing the existing one, not taking out a second one. I read further. The date on the letter was from 2 weeks ago. Richard had been planning this while I was in the hospital. Why did we need a second mortgage? His job paid well. My savings were substantial. I went into Richard's home office. He usually kept the door locked, but in his haste this morning he had left it slightly ajar. I pushed it open. The room was messy, which was unlike him. Papers were scattered everywhere. I went to his desk and turned on his computer. Locked. Password protected. I tried his birthday. Incorrect. I tried our anniversary. Incorrect. I tried the name of his first dog. Incorrect. I looked around the desk. I opened the top drawer. It was empty except for a few pens. I opened the bottom drawer. Tucked way in the back, under a stack of old magazines, was a sleek black burner phone. My heart started hammering against my ribs. Why would my husband need a burner phone? I pressed the power button. It had a charge. No passcode. I opened the messages. The most recent text was from a contact named L. Did she sign? Richard's reply. Done. Leaving for the closing on Friday. Then we are free. Friday. That was 3 days away. Closing. You don't have a closing for a simple refinance that you mail in. You have a closing when you sell a house. Or when you take out a massive loan against it. The room spun. He wasn't refinancing to save money. He was cashing out. He was stealing the equity in our home. My home. I had bought this house before we got married. It was my inheritance from my grandmother. I had put Richard on the deed 2 years ago because he claimed it would help his credit score for a business loan. It was the biggest mistake of my life. If he had tricked me into signing a quitclaim deed last night, I had just signed over my sole ownership to him. Or I had signed permission for him to take out a massive loan that he would disappear with, leaving me with the debt and no house. Then we are free. He was leaving me. I put the phone back exactly where I found it. I backed out of the room. I needed to think. I couldn't confront him yet. If I screamed at him, he would just deny it, or worse, he would accelerate his plan. He thought I was a sick, weak invalid. He thought I was stupid. I looked at myself in the hallway mirror. I looked terrible, pale, dark circles, messy hair. Good. Let him think I was still out of it. I needed help. I couldn't call our family lawyer. Richard played golf with him. I needed someone Richard didn't know. I needed my cousin Mark. Mark was a real estate attorney in the city. We hadn't spoken much lately because Richard didn't like him, which now made perfect sense. But family is family. I dialed his number. Mark. I whispered. It's Sarah. I need you. I think Richard is trying to steal my house. Mark met me at a coffee shop 3 towns over. I wore a hat and sunglasses, terrified Richard might have a tracker on my car. I showed Mark the picture I had taken of the burner phone texts. I explained the papers I signed while delirious. Mark listened, his face growing darker by the minute. Sarah, Mark said seriously. If you signed a quitclaim deed transferring the property solely to him, he can sell it without your permission. Or if you signed a power of attorney, he can sign for you at a closing. The text says, closing on Friday. That means he probably has a buyer lined up, a cash buyer. Who wants a quick deal. He's going to sell the house out from under you, take the cash and vanish. Can we stop it? I asked, tears streaming down my face. I can't lose my grandmother's house. It's all I have. Mark leaned back. We can file an emergency injunction, but that takes time. And it tips him off. If he knows you know, he might empty your joint bank accounts and run before Friday. He paused, tapping his pen on the table. You said you were sick when you signed? Yes. Pneumonia. High fever. Okay, that's duress, Mark said. But proving that in court after the fact is hard. We need to stop the transaction at the closing. How? I asked. I don't even know where the closing is. We can find out, Mark said. If there's a title company involved, there's a record. I can run a search on your property address to see if any title requests have been opened. Give me an hour. He pulled out his laptop. I watched him type, praying that Richard hadn't been smart enough to use some underground, shady lawyer. 20 minutes later, Mark looked up. Got it. A title request was opened by Apex Title Services in downtown. The closing is scheduled for Friday at 10 a.m. He turned the screen to me. And look at this. The seller is listed as Richard Evans. Just him. So I did sign it away, I whispered, feeling sick. I signed the quitclaim. Likely, Mark said. Or he forged it. Either way, he thinks he owns the house right now. But here is the good news. He hasn't recorded the deed yet. He's probably holding the deed to record it simultaneously with the sale to avoid alerting you. Mark smiled, a sharp, shark-like smile. Sarah, do you still have the keys to your safety deposit box? The one your grandmother left you. Yes, I said. Why? Because, Mark said. Didn't you tell me once that your grandmother put the house in a family trust years ago, and you just forgot to update the title when you transferred it to Richard? I stared at him. No. She left it to me in her will. I put Richard on the deed. Mark winked. Right. But imagine if you had transferred the deed into a revocable living trust before you put Richard on it. Or, more accurately, imagine if you transferred your interest into a trust 2 days ago. I don't understand, I said. If I sign a new deed now transferring the house to a trust and we record it before Friday, then the paper Richard has is worthless. He can't sell what he doesn't own. But I already signed his paper, I argued. Yes, Mark said. But deed transfers are all about who records first in the county clerk's office. It's a race notice, jurisdiction. If we go to the county clerk today and record a deed transferring your 50% interest, or 100% if we can prove his deed is fraud, into a trust controlled by you, then when the title company runs the final check on Friday morning, they will see a cloud on the title. They won't close. But he'll know, I said. He'll know on Friday morning. Exactly, Mark said. He'll be at the table ready to collect his check. And the deal will implode. And you will be there to see it. I will. I asked, terrified. Yes. You need to be there. You need to confront him. And we need to bring the police for the fraud. We spent the rest of the day drafting documents. Mark created the Sarah Evans Living Trust. I signed a quitclaim deed transferring my interest in the house into the trust. We drove straight to the county clerk's office. I was shaking as I handed the document to the clerk. Please record this immediately, Mark said. The clerk stamped it. Clack clack. That sound was the sound of safety. It was done. As of 3 p.m. on Wednesday, the house technically belonged to the trust. If Richard tried to sell it on Friday using a deed signed by me personally, the title company would flag the discrepancy. The chain of title was broken. I went home and played the part. I lay on the couch when Richard came home. How are you feeling? He asked, trying to sound caring, but I could hear the excitement in his voice. He was counting down the hours. Still weak, I rasped. I think I'll just sleep until the weekend. That's a good idea, he said, patting my leg. You rest. I have a big day on Friday. Big business meeting. Might run late. Hey, I said. Good luck with your meeting. I watched him walk to the kitchen whistling. He poured himself a drink. He was celebrating. He thought he had pulled off the perfect crime. He had no idea the landmine I had just planted. Thursday was torture. Richard was manic. He was packing a gym bag that I knew was actually an overnight bag. He was taking calls in the backyard. I stayed in my room texting Mark. Is everything set? Mark replied, yes. I spoke to a friend at the police station. Given the text messages and the fraudulent deed attempt, they are interested. We meet at Apex Title at 9:50 a.m. tomorrow. I looked at my wedding photo on the dresser. 5 years. 5 years of lies. I wondered who it was. Probably his assistant Lisa. She had always been too friendly. It didn't matter. By tomorrow noon they would both be nothing to me. Friday morning. Richard put on his best suit. He checked his hair in the mirror. I'm off, he called out. Don't wait up. Love you. He didn't even come into the room to kiss me goodbye. He just yelled it from the hallway. I waited until I heard the garage door close. Then I threw off the covers. I wasn't the sick wife anymore. I took a shower, washing away the sickness and the fear. I put on my sharpest blazer and a pair of heels. I applied red lipstick. Or paint. I grabbed my purse and the file Mark had given me. I got into my car and drove downtown. I met Mark in the lobby of the Apex Title building. He had 2 uniformed officers with him. Ready? Mark asked. Ready, I said. My heart was pounding but my hands were steady. We took the elevator to the 12th floor. The receptionist looked up, surprised to see police. Can I help you? We're here for the Evans closing, Mark said authoritatively. Conference room B? Yes, but Mr. Evans is already in there with the buyers. They are just finishing up. Perfect, Mark said. He didn't wait for permission. He walked down the hall and we followed. Mark threw open the door to conference room B. The scene was frozen in time. Richard was sitting at the head of the table, a pen in his hand, a wide grin on his face. Across from him sat an older couple, the buyers, looking confused. A title agent was organizing a stack of checks. Stop. Mark announced, his voice booming. Richard's head snapped up. When he saw me, the color drained from his face instantly. He dropped the pen. Sarah, he squeaked. What are you doing here? You're sick. I'm feeling much better, Richard, I said, walking into the room. The heels clicking on the hardwood floor sounded like gunshots. I decided I wanted to be here for the business meeting. I looked at the buyers. I apologize for the interruption. I'm Sarah Evans, Richard's wife, and the owner of the house you are trying to buy. The older woman looked at Richard. You said she was in a coma, she whispered. You said you had power of attorney because she was incapacitated. Richard stammered, standing up. She's delirious. She doesn't know what she's saying. I know exactly what I'm saying, I said. I turned to the title agent. Have you run the final title update this morning? The agent looked nervous. We ran it yesterday afternoon. It was clear. Run it again, Mark commanded. Right now. The agent typed furiously on her laptop. The room was silent. Richard was sweating, looking for an exit, but the police officers were blocking the door. There seems to be a problem, the agent said, her face pale. A deed was recorded 2 days ago. The property was transferred to the Sarah Evans Living Trust. What? Richard screamed. That's impossible. She signed the quitclaim on Tuesday. And I signed the trust deed on Wednesday, I said coolly. And since mine was recorded and yours wasn't, yours is just a piece of paper, Richard. The buyers stood up furious. You tried to sell us a house you don't own, the man shouted. We wired the funds. Where is our money? It's in escrow, the agent said quickly. We can return it. Richard looked at me, his eyes full of hate. You set me up. You set yourself up, I said. You drugged me. You forced me to sign papers while I was sick. You tried to steal my inheritance and run away with. Who is it? Lisa. Richard flinched. How did you? I found the burner phone, I said. I pulled the printouts of the texts from my file and handed them to the police officer. Officer, I'd like to report an attempted real estate fraud and forgery. The officer stepped forward. Richard Evans, please stand up and place your hands behind your back. Richard started to panic. No. It's a misunderstanding. It was a surprise. I was selling it to buy us a bigger house. Sarah, tell them. Save it for the judge, Richard, I said. They handcuffed him. As they walked him past me, he leaned in. You'll lose everything without me. You can't pay the bills alone. I laughed. Richard, I own the house. I have a trust fund. I have a career. You were the only liability I had. And I just liquidated you. The buyers left, shaking my hand and apologizing. The title agent was firing off emails to legal. I stood in the empty conference room with Mark. You did good, cuz, Mark said. Really good. I can't believe he thought he could get away with it, I said, leaning against the table. Greed makes people stupid, Mark said. He was so focused on the money he forgot that you're smarter than him. I drove home alone. The house was quiet, but it didn't feel empty anymore. It felt safe. I walked into the kitchen and saw the spot where he had forced me to sign the papers. I didn't feel fear. I felt power. I poured myself a glass of wine and sat on the back porch. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Richard's number, probably his lawyer now. I blocked it. The closing didn't go as planned for him. But for me, it went exactly right. I had closed the chapter on a toxic marriage and I had kept the keys to my kingdom. I took a sip of wine and watched the sun go down. I was exhausted, yes. But I was finally truly free.